Hello, you're listening to Talkin Music with Joshua Kirk. On this show, I speak with musicians about albums they've made, their careers, shows they've played, and a range of other topics. My guest is a drummer, singer, and songwriter known for playing drums in the DC power pop band Jukebox the Ghost, and that is Jesse Kristin. His band's latest single, Truth, dropped this late October, and they've played a bunch of shows across the US this year. In this interview, I spoke with Jesse about the evolution of Jukebox, revisiting their older albums, making a solo album post-COVID, and the band's famous podcast. So without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed my interview with Jesse Kristin, my guest on Talkin' Music with Joshua Kirk. So how are you, man?
I'm good. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. On to some questions now. Jukebox the Ghost has been a band for over 20 years as of right now. How does it feel to continue writing music and playing shows after all this time?
It feels it does feel awesome.
Yeah,
Uh 20 years is a long time,
yeah,
and um there were moments when like I think like any job, any career, you hit a 10-year mark, maybe you hit a 7-year mark,
yeah,
and you kind of have to look back on it and go, all right, like is this the thing that
yeah.
I'm going to do
Oh,
with my
yeah.
life? Um, we're now 30. I'm just turned 39. I feel like I sort of like it worked out that in 2020, which was I think there was a lot of reflection happening in 2020 because society
Totally.
stopped. Well, like touring stopped. It was the
Yeah,
first year since college that I knew for a fact that I wouldn't be on the road.
yeah.
And it for that and a lot of other reasons, there was a lot of reflection happening. And I found that, pre-pandemic, I felt like I was doing what I was doing. I was a little bit old. I was like, well, I'm 35 and I'm in this band. And just like somehow, like after the pandemic lifted and we were able to tour again, it was like, it felt like a gift. I was like, getting to tour, like I'm 36 and I get to do this. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So it feels really good, to still be doing it. And I'm reminded that, staying together that's kind of like the most impressive part. Not to minimize our legacy, but music, I think, everyone can make music. Even even a drummer can write songs and make music, which I love doing. Being able to tour and with the same guys for that long I mean, that takes a lot of endurance and it takes resilience and flexibility, and that's kind of a total. I'm really proud of that, the staying together thing.
Oh, yeah. Like I was listening to uh part of your podcast and you talking about uh being a three-piece band with the same people and kind of staying that way throughout your career, whereas other bands sometimes start out with maybe like just two people and then expand to like like seven, something like that.
Yeah.
And as for stuff you and your band have been working on recently, over the past year, you've put out a handful of singles, including one that just dropped, named Truth. And I'm a little curious about the writing and recording process of these songs.
To be totally transparent, these days there's a lot of autonomy, because we can really self produce and self record in the kind of beginning stages of creativity. So in this band, it's typically Ben and Tommy. we've got two main songwriters in the band. I write sometimes, and I'm contributing more these days, but in kind of a George Harrison role.
Yeah.
Um, so that one was largely Ben, our pianist who's singing it,
Yeah.
the song "Truth."
Yeah.
He did work with this outside producer Noah Sacre,
Yeah.
and came up with like they kind of came up with that groove. So, and this doesn't go for every Jukebox the Ghost song or record. Well, the records are always the three of us, but in terms of the initial spark, that will sometimes happen with people outside the band. So
Yeah.
in this case, it was Ben and Noah, um, and they wrote that song together. So Tommy and I weren't a part of the songwriting of it, but then what happens is they bring it to the studio and we put the Jukebox the Ghost love into it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's also can be good for challenging us because the song has kind of a hip hop, or at least as far as like our music goes, it leans a little bit more soul or hip hop in terms of the bass and drum groove,
Yeah.
you know. And it's I think that is something I would struggle with. I would think I would get in my own way if I were to just play that song in a room. You know, I would be limited by what I can actually physically come up with or old habits, let's say, you know. So hearing what they came up with without the Jesse show,
Yeah.
um, it kind of induces a creativity in there.
Oh yeah. Listening to these singles, I would say my favorites are the ones that are uh more like Tommy centric songs, Friends Again and Save a Little Room, because I think they exemplify what he does so well with songwriting and stuff like that.
I
And
love those two.
besides working on new music, you guys have done a bunch of shows around the US this year where uh, the concept of this tour was perform your first three albums front to back for 3 nights in various cities. And I'm wondering when you guys came up with the idea for this tour centered around your early work.
I feel like we came up with the idea for doing the three albums, 3 nights, uh, about a year and a half ago. There was a point where I think I was the guy in the band who was the most excited to do a front to back album show.
Yeah,
And I had suggested doing that for the Let Live and Let Ghost for the first record because I was like, you know, this was about 2 years ago. I was like, guys, like this record's over 10. We already missed it. We already missed the milestone, but I feel like we should do this.
yeah,
And you know, we kind of straddle a line where like we are we can play bigger venues around the country, but if we were to only play our old music, I don't know. Like we don't really have like a one record that has like a breakthrough hit. You know, I think every jukebox fan might point to a different favorite record. And so anyway, I pitched like let's like play a few shows or a mini tour on the first record. And the guys were quickly like, well, I think it would be smarter to do a lot more than the first record or like
yeah.
do this idea essentially. So, which ends up being more work, but I think there's maybe more of a draw in it. Um, but you know, it seems like the album shows are now so common these days, and I love it. I'm here for it. You
Oh
know, like
yeah.
I've been calling them nostalgia shows, but maybe nostalgia can be a negative word. So I'm starting to break that habit and say throwback, you know,
Oh
but like
yeah.
the full album throwback show. It's very common, you know.
I did happen to go to one of these shows, which is when you guys played at the Atlantis in DC on May 9th, and it was night two, so it was so it was your second album, Everything Under the Sun, performed in its entirety, and it was definitely very cool to hear that album in sequence performed in front of a live audience. And granted, it doesn't really like uh capture kind of the same vibe from like the recording, but like but like to hear those songs like uh in a live setting and also hear you guys like in between songs kind of break certain nuances of them down. Uh that album happens to be my favorite jukebox album, and it's also your debut for North Carolina indie label Yep Rock Records. What do you remember most fondly about the creation of this album? Do you have any favorite songs from it? Hmm.
First of all, that's I think that is a great choice for a favorite jukebox album.
Yeah,
That might be my favorite. It's if I had to pick, the guys in the band are I think they're a lot more diplomatic and they'll be like the new one is the best one, trust me. But I really love this record and Safe Travels.
yeah,
And it was so awesome that you came out to that show. So we love having you as a Everything Under the Sun mega fan.
yeah,
That record, the studio was it was Tarkin's studio in Connecticut, and
yeah.
it's actually in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's kind of a random place for bigger rock acts. Not that we were back then, but for bigger rock acts to go record. But this studio had this record was produced by Peter Cadis, who in the around the early aughts, mid aughts, produced some early Interpol and the National records in that studio.
Oh
So
yeah,
really, yeah, it was really comfortable. It actually happens to be in his house, so we got to crash there. We got to sleep where we worked, wake up, make coffee, and it was autumn. It was fall out. So I remember just that studio environment being probably my favorite one we've ever done.
yeah.
Um, because the record before it, I think we were sleeping on floors. And
Oh yeah, that's what
then,
I heard.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, or at least some of us were. Ben probably got the bed, the one bed. And then, we've since made records where it's like, Safe Travels. I know the drums were recorded in Manhattan, so just a little bit more of a chaotic uh, day-to-day experience. But
yeah,
the other thing was just the pre-production. Essentially the three of us in a room arranging the songs for Everything Under the Sun. That was all done in Nantucket. So me, Ben, and Tommy holed up in Nantucket in this house to put together the arrangements for this record. And favorite song, The Stars is always a favorite. The Stars for Tommy songs, that's got to be it.
yeah,
And Schizophrenia. I'm gonna say Schizophrenia because I was going through my New Order, the Smiths, New Order, Manchester, UK, obsession back then. And so I really wanted to put a New Order inspired beat on a jukebox song. And that's
yeah.
kind of where the Schizophrenia drum beat came.
And that one, yeah, I hear that songs like that are like really difficult to play because of like uh not only like how fast they are, but also like a lot of notes like schizophrenia just crashes in like something like that. And oh yeah, and I definitely share the same sentiment with Tommy, and that like the Stars is like even better live when it has the like Sun interlude right before it. Like the build up to that one thing whereas like it seems kind of weird for you guys to just throw it on in the set and you're randomly just like blast it with bam 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 something like that.
Yeah,
Um
absolutely. Also, like I think this record is us being probably still we're less mature than the records that would come after it. So I think it was still in that kind of highly caffeinated, silly. We weren't as self-aware. Let's put it that way.
oh yeah.
And yeah, the sun also is, I don't know what we were. I don't know what we were doing, what inspired all that. I guess I should ask Tommy. But and this coffee mug, I picked it intentionally. This is from those from this is a coffee mug I had in Philly around the time that we made that record. So
Oh
still
yeah.
have it.
Oh wow. I really like this album for like it's cool flow, tight, yet tight yet still loose production, and very well written songs. And Schizophrenia, I think, is easily my favorite for its complex musical structure and how its lyrics reflect on mental illness and kind of sort of told from the perspective of someone who like may or may not have like schizophrenia, something like that. So the fact that the song is like all crazy, like musically, kind of fits with that persona well. And now I want to talk about the record after that, 2012's Safe Travels. How did this album impact Jukebox at this point in their career? What are some things you like most about it?
I'll start with the album cover
Oh
is
yeah,
my best friend he painted it. And we, every time we make a record, we're like, okay, what is the album image going to be? That tends to fall on me. I tend to, even though Tommy in the band has become such a successful visual artist, I tend to be like the art director for these records, at least especially back in the day I was. And yeah, we decided to have him paint this abstract image for it, so I love that about it. It's like I said earlier, I think this would be my favorite jukebox album, at least in terms of like the um, what kind of band we were at the time. You don't hear us really being too good at being a pop band.
yeah,
We've always tried to be a pop band. We've always sort of like been like, oh, we let's write singles and get famous. Why not? But we're just a little too weird for that.
yeah.
And yeah, like this Safe Travels has catchy songs, but it's got songs like Adulthood, that again I kind of put this like New Order or LCD Sound System inspired dance beat.
Oh yeah.
But it's a pretty weird song. It's like it's about death essentially. As are a few of the songs on this record. And actually, I had lost my father right around the time we released it, and Ben had lost his grandfather, and so that added some weight to this too. It wasn't. This record wasn't inspired by those events, but it certainly felt like some cosmic timing. We also we as a band, we sort of we didn't choose this, but we've always done this really slow climb. A slow, like we just tour and tour, and slowly more we get more people to come out. So we were playing bigger shows than we were, you know, with the prior record. We did. We had played Letterman. We had done Bonnaroo at that point, but still just very much like felt like we had been a band a while, but we still had a long way to go.
I mean, this is your third album, and I actually happened to review this album on YouTube like October 8th, 2012. So I do remember vividly like that whole era, and I I really loved the album at the time, and revisiting it recently, yeah, I think it holds up really well. And I actually want to rewind back to your band's first record, Let Live and Let Go, and specifically the song Under My Skin, which has become both a fan favorite and an underground hit. Um, what does the song mean to you and your bandmates, along with those who have heard it? Can you tell me about your reaction to its more recent success?
To be fully transparent, uh, this is this is something that I hoped would happen,
Yeah,
and it's what happened was that TikTok, well, first a podcast called the Magnus Archives, and then some of its followers
yeah,
on TikTok have found this song
yes.
and hyped it up and spread it, and now it's our number one streamed song. And I kind of hoped that if Jukebox the Ghost couldn't take off on the internet back in the day on MySpace or Facebook or whatever,
Yeah.
that someone with some sphere of influence would find a song. I was like, well, we have enough music out there that it's bound to happen, right? Like some some like uh corner of the internet will find us and just give us a little bump.
Oh yeah.
Um that, and you can't really predict that, but I kind of, it's like, well, we have a lot of music out there, so maybe it'll happen. So yeah, they so what I wanted to be transparent about is that, like, I'm kind of aloof about this world,
Yeah,
and I don't really understand totally what is going on.
yeah,
But I love it. It seems like this very creative community who listen to this horror fiction podcast, The Magnus Archives. They will sometimes attribute certain songs, associate certain songs with certain entities. So what we know is that there's an entity called the Flesh,
yeah.
that Under My Skin, that a lot of them feel that Under My Skin is reflective of that entity. And then there's also I think for some in the trans community that this song, they can hear a metaphor in it
Yeah,
for having two genders, for having two identities
yeah.
trapped beneath your skin, and what that experience might feel like. So it's all so friggin' cool. I mean, it's so cool. We also, we didn't really choose to be a band for maybe like a nerdier musical theater or comic leaning type, but we have who we've attracted to our shows over the years has showed us that this is like, I think they like that we are, that at least this first record has a lot of maybe fantastical themes.
Oh yeah, because like and also like both Ben and Tommy kind of have their own little idea of the songs where because Ben has all like the love songs and then Tommy has like all the like yeah apocalypse like uh
Yeah,
that yeah it's like a whole like suite and I
yeah,
think uh and yeah you pretty much hit the nail on the head in terms of like how this song got like newfound exposure and like also like on top of all that it's just a great song like it's I mean just like the just like the songwriting and just kind of like uh yeah there's kind of like a Paul McCartney sort of whimsy in there and also the recording too has a lot of like really uh cool moments on it like the like the one part where there's the like that's like brand new beginning into England. Uh, uh and like as Ben's singing, there's like an in the background, and then also like the final note on the harpsichord in the end. Like yeah, it's like
oh yeah. The studio we're in, it was a pretty cool one in North Carolina, but well, I was gonna say they only had like a timpani and a harpsichord. I'm
yeah,
realizing that's not for like extra like fun instruments. I think they had a lot more than that. It's more that we had such limited studio time. We had no money.
eh,
So once we did all of our basic tracks, our piano, drums, guitar, we were like, with what limited time we had left, we were like, we gotta throw some other stuff on there. And normally that's like the fun part.
yeah.
You do all the basic stuff and then you get to kind of play around. We had like no time, but we did quickly do harpsichord and timpani. of all the instruments. It's pretty random.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm also hearing like Hammond organ, like at the end of Good Day and during like the little jam on A Matter of Time as well.
Good year. Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of podcasts, you guys started a podcast of your own named Famish in 2023. Where you and a variety of guests share stories from the road, musical tidbits, and obviously tell like plenty of jokes. When did the idea for this podcast come about? Any favorite episodes you've done so far?
The idea to make a podcast or that we could make a podcast was, probably first mentioned like 5 years ago,
Yeah,
and then, when we actually like, I think Ben and I were on a drive and we wrote an actual like email where we organized our thoughts.
yeah.
Also, we were touring a little less, so we realized maybe we could actually do this. So it was probably about 3 years ago at this point that
Oh yeah.
we decided like let's click print and actually do it. What's a favorite episode? Honestly, I love all the guests we've had on, but
Yeah.
and we have this number we actually just reactivated, but it's 757 jukebox, like if you spell jukebox. And we've gotten all these voicemails into this phone number thing.
Yeah.
And the ones where we address people's questions are like my favorite because you just like,
Oh yeah, I see you call them Mailbox the Ghost because it's like your mailbag, which is like very,
yeah,
very clever right there.
yeah. But I mean, it's idiotic, it's a podcast, like, and it should be idiotic.
Oh
Also,
yeah.
I like to joke like we're three straight white guys in our 30s. People really want to hear our take, like, or like we should probably make a podcast because it just seems so ridiculous. Like how many are out there to choose from of like whatever guys yelling over each other.
Yeah.
But I like the call-in episodes or the voicemail episodes.
I really liked listening to like the two-parter episodes where you talk about the making of your records. You've done it for Let Live and Let Ghost, and like the two most recent episodes were on Everything Under the Sun. I'm really, yeah, I really hope you guys do like the making of Safe Travels two-parter for Famish. I think, yeah, that would be uh fun to listen to. As for episodes you've done already, I was really intrigued by your interview with Dan Romer, producer, film composer, and he happened to produce Safe Travels along with Jukebox the Ghost self-titled album. Uh, what makes the band's relationship with him so significant?
That's a great question. And
Yeah,
I'm so glad you brought up Dan because while I was trying to figure out what to say about Safe Travels, in the back of my mind, I was like, I have to explain that it was produced by Dan Romer.
yeah,
Um, Dan Romer, we met him on tour because he was a member of Jenny and Youngs's touring band at the time,
yeah,
and we hit it off as friends. And then, he's just like he's really a special individual. I mean, he's has such a talented mind, and no one is surprised that he's a successful film composer
yeah.
these days. And I guess like working with him for this record felt like it was a long time coming. It was, I think we almost did Everything Under the Sun with him just because, again, we didn't have money at the time. We did end up scrounging a budget for that second, for Everything Under the Sun, but um, we were like, here's this friend of ours who's like really loves our band. He knows music theory, but he's also has this like kind of manic energy that we can feed off of. Um, and, and yeah, it just was such a good fit. And it still is. We probably should keep making records with him, but he's so damn busy. So it was really like having one of your buddies uh, like step up and fill the producer role, and that can be a beautiful thing. The other thing is like Dan, um, he has a very strong music theory background, but also he's like very like when him and I talk drums, we can be very intense, and like there's a reason why the drums on Safe Travels are so loud.
Oh
They
yeah,
really
yeah.
are. Like
Oh
they're
yeah, and they're clearly a big part of that production. And yeah, it has, I think, probably like the the best drum sound out of any of your records. And although like I mean, the drums sound great on like the first two, and I think uh I think it's good that you guys ultimately ended up with Peter Cadis because you kind of hear his like magic touch all over everything under the sun in a way. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And the second record was done on with a lot of vintage instruments, and it was done on tape. So the drums were recorded on the tape. It has kind of a mellow, very saturated, warm sound.
yeah,
Um, and then the record we did with Safe Travels, we were trying to do something that could compete in kind of a more modern indie rock world. He also was the reason why I sing, which we haven't talked about, but
yes,
my singing debut, which would come on the self-titled record,
yeah,
that was we were doing this jazzy little intro to a song.
Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood. And Dan was like, "Why doesn't Jesse sing it?" And I think out of everyone in the room, I think I liked that idea the least. I was like, "Absolutely not," you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But yeah, definitely cool you were able to make two records with Dan and that he was able to push you guys to like, you know, maybe do certain things that you wouldn't have thought to do. And like I mean by these couple records you're actually uh now adding bass to the like instrumental palette. Like and you know, on the case of Safe Travels, this is kind of there in the background, but like but then on like self-titled, it's like really up front on like multiple songs. And uh and this famous podcast also references Philly indie rock vets Dr. Dog a lot, specifically on the two episodes about everything under the sun. So like how does Dr. Dog resonate with you musically and emotionally? And are there any Jukebox the Ghost songs partially inspired by their work?
Well, I think Dr. Dog, aside from just being like just such a great band,
Yeah.
um, they definitely fall into the camp of a indie rock band, maybe coming up around the same era. They're older. They were around before us
Yes.
by a few years.
Yeah.
But a band that feels like a group of friends first.
Yeah.
Particularly Scott and Toby,
Yeah.
who have really been able to make this thing joyous and stay together
Oh
and
yeah.
just keep going,
Oh
keep
yeah.
going. Um, and I mean that's inspiring today, but back then I was so drawn to them because they were Beatlesy, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and
Oh
like I
yeah.
mentioned, yeah, I mentioned this, I guess, in Famish, but I mean, I'm almost embarrassed by how obsessed I became with um, using Dr. Dog as inspiration
Oh yeah,
to,
because I'm not because
yeah,
there's not too many music podcasts I listen to that weren't like indie music kind of centric that that really mentioned Dr. Dog. So to hear them mentioned
cool.
a bunch of times in the podcast as someone who really loves them too, and you know,
Yep,
I'm known for like talking about them on the internet. Like yeah, it definitely struck a chord with me, and I think similarly uh uh to everything under the sun, they've used a lot of like vintage recording equipment and kind of made records that were very like Beatlesy and and everything under the sun and parts of Let Live and Let Go definitely feel Beatlesy in terms of like the songwriting, but even sometimes in terms of the equipment being used. And I definitely think I can hear those vibes on the solo album that you've worked on since COVID under the name Don Pomeroy, which is called Vertigo Horizon. When did you start writing songs for this project?
A couple things. One, I watched your podcast episode with Scott from Dr. Dog. Loved
Yep.
it. So I just wanted to say that before I
Oh
moved on from
yeah.
Dr. Dog that I love the Philly connection too. Was that was palpable back then. So yeah, they were just like a Beatlesy indie rock band that showed us that you could kind of be Beatlesy
Oh
and
yeah,
also and also be yourself.
and also like
Yeah,
they're I know the same year Let Live and Let Goes came out, they also put out like in my opinion their magnum opus Fate, that
I
album.
love Fate.
Yeah,
Love Fate.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, we were Tommy and I in particular were just so into it, and Jukebox doesn't really do this, but they really aren't afraid to do like a really small, tight drum sound.
Yeah.
Like towels on the drums. Uh, at least that's kind of what it sounds like a very, very Ringo. You mentioned my solo record, which I actually haven't even announced it or anything. So, but why the hell not? The songs from that I started writing around the time the pandemic was lifting, so maybe like 2021.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I just kind of I let them hang out. I got busy doing other stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finally releasing this record next year. So yeah, and it's called Vertigo Horizon. Um, Most of the songs are about my relationship with my now wife, but
Yeah.
there's a mixed bag on there. But I just wanted to get your ears on it because
Oh
you're like,
yeah. Oh yeah, and I
I
like
don't,
how
yeah,
and I agree with what you said about the album sounding like kind of like uh very like lo-fi, just like demos, but still like fully realized. Because I feel like a lot of like early Dr. Dog records, not only do they have retro, but they're like yeah, they're like very lo-fi. Yeah, but I also hear listening to it, I also heard elements of what Tame Impala and Mac DeMarco do, which those are also like kind of indie alternative uh artists who make stuff that is kind of retro in a way.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but I got carried away because these were demos, and then you know I Um, I was
Mhm.
gonna re-record everything from the ground up, and then at some point, I played them for Ben and Tommy, and they were like, I think they heard that there was already a lot I had spent a lot of time on them,
Yeah.
and so they were like, you should just put them out like this, and I was like, nah, I can't do that. But I decided to kind of re-record some things, leave almost everything, and yeah, and it'll be a fun little thing to watch how people react. And I was gonna say, we keep circling back to Dr. Dog, but the two singer thing too is just
Oh
as far
yeah.
as as
I
far as
mean,
Beatles and as
you
far as
guys
Ben
do
and
that
Tommy.
too,
Yeah,
because there's Tommy songs and then there's
yeah,
Ben songs. Oh, and what are you currently working on right now? Like,
sure. We actually have we haven't talked about this in a formal way, but our fans probably know that we have over two albums worth of songs ready to be released. So we are currently in full planning mode, uh, picking which songs will go where, and we are talking about potentially releasing not a double album all at once, but possibly a
yeah.
two part record, and with some sort of thematic concept running throughout it. So that's going to be pretty fun. And at the same time, we're still recording. We're actually in the studio most of next month. So we just came back from the road. We were on the road for a month, and then we're taking a little bit of a break from each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Life is trucking along, but we will be in the studio chipping away, and we have some pretty massive collections of songs that we are thinking about releasing all at once.
That's
Yeah,
definitely really good to hear. Would you mind letting our listeners know where we can find you on social media?
yeah, I think I know how to do that.
Yeah.
So it's Jukebox the Ghost on Instagram, X, and we're on Facebook
Yep.
under that, and same with TikTok. So at Jukebox the Ghost.
Well, Jesse, it's been a real pleasure having you on Talkin' Music to discuss your thoughts on music and other things that you're working on.
It's been an honor to be here hanging out with you. I'm a fan of this podcast. I'm a big fan of you.
Yeah.
You're my favorite music reviewer out there, so I'll keep seeing what your takes are on all the latest albums.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, that's cool. Really great
you
to
know,
talk to you about music and other things and yeah.
thanks, Joshua. It was a real pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. You too, Jesse. See ya. If you want to learn more about Jukebox the Ghost and check out their records, just check out the link to their website below in the description. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a nice comment. If you have any suggestions for how I could make future improvements for the show, I'd be glad to hear them. You can also find me at my Facebook and Instagram links down below. Talking Music is edited by Louisa Phillips. Thank you to Jesse Kristin for participating and to you for listening. Have a good day, everyone.